So this is another Italian folk tale called The Hare's Liver. This is about Peter and Jesus. My daughter assures me that this is actually not a proper and pious story to tell about the Lord and his disciple. So we might perhaps pretend that this is a Mexican fairy tale about Jesus and Pedro, and I'll just call them Jesus and Peter for convenience sake. So once Jesus and Peter were traveling together, just hiking across a field, just the two of them traveling between villages, and as they're going across the field, they startle a hare. A rabbit comes out of its burrow and it just freezes in place. And Jesus says, "Quick, Peter, your sack." Peter whips out his sack, scoops up the hare, in the sack and closes it. And Jesus says, "Good job, Peter. You've caught a rabbit for our dinner. So when we get to the next village, since you're such a good hunter and such a good cook, you can cook up the rabbit for us." So they arrive at the inn at the next village, and Jesus sits himself down in the dining room and says, "Innkeeper, bring us half a bottle of wine. My friend here would like to use your kitchen to prepare our supper." And so Peter goes back into the kitchen, and he's good at this. He skins the hare, he quarters it, he throws it in the frying pan, begins to fry it up, and it smells delicious. It was a good fat hare. So it's very mouth-watering. And as Peter's cooking it up with one end, he picks to the entrails with the other, and he notices, oh, here's the hare's liver. Tosses it in the frying pan, fries up nice and crisp very quickly. Smells delicious. Peter thinks to himself, I think I'll just go ahead and eat the liver right now with this little bit of bread that's here in the kitchen, and Jesus will never know. Okay. It's the point at which my kids always say, "No, Peter, don't do it." He eats the hare's liver with a little bit of bread, and then he brings out the rest of the rabbit to the table, and he serves it up, 2 quarters on Jesus' plate and 2 quarters on his. They say the blessing. Peter starts eating. He looks up, and the Lord's not eating. He says, "Lord, what's the matter?" And Jesus says, "Well, Peter, I'm looking. I see the hare. I see the 4 quarters, but where's the hare's liver?" And Peter almost chokes on the mouthful he's got, and he says, "Well, I don't know, Lord. I didn't see it. Maybe this hare didn't have a liver." And Jesus says, "Well, maybe." He smiles. He starts eating. Poor Peter can't eat the rest of the meal. He's just so anxious about this. He's afraid that Jesus has found him out. He's anxious about this lie he's told to the Lord. So they finish. They go to sleep. Peter can hardly sleep that night for fear. He finally falls asleep around dawn, just when Jesus wakes him up. Says, "Hey, it's time to hike to the next village." So they go to the next village, and they arrive in town, and everybody is sad and in mourning. And they say, "Well, why? Why are people sad?" And they say, "Didn't you hear? The king's daughter is dying. She's sick, and the king has promised a huge sack of gold coins to whoever can cure her." So Jesus pulls Peter aside, his arm around his shoulder. He says, "Peter, you should get that money. That'll help to fund our ministry. Here's what I want you to do. You go to the palace, and you tell them that you are a famous physician, and that you can cure the king's daughter if they will leave you with her for 1 hour. As soon as you're alone with the king's daughter, you take your knife, you cut off her head, and you put it in a bucket of water." Right, now focus here, Peter. Listen. You put it in a bucket of water and soak it for 1 hour, then you take it out of the bucket, you put it back on her shoulders, she'll come alive again, and she'll be fine. So Peter, with a little bit of trepidation, goes ahead and does this. He goes to the palace, they lock him in the room with the princess, she's asleep, he takes his knife, cuts off her head. The bed is soaked in blood, he puts the head in a bucket of water, sits down in the chair to wait for 1 hour. 1 hour later, knocking at the door. "Hey, open up. Is the princess well yet?" So Peter jumps up, takes the head out of the bucket, puts it on the headless trunk of the princess. Nothing. It doesn't stick. My story says. So he's frantic now. The pounding on the door gets louder. Say, "Open up, let us in." Finally, he's frantic, wondering what to do. He's trying over and over again. Nothing is happening. And finally, they break in the door, and the king himself rushes in with the guards. They see, "What have you done? You've murdered the princess, you monster." The king says, "Take him away to execute him immediately." So poor Peter, they tie him up, they're dragging him through the streets and abusing him. They're taking him to the gallows. When who does he see in the street but Jesus himself? And he calls out, "Lord, only you can save me. Please help me, Lord." So Jesus comes up to the guards, the captain of the guards. He says, what are you executing this man for? And they say, "Haven't you heard? He's murdered the king's daughter, this fiend." And Jesus says, "No, he hasn't. The king's daughter is perfectly okay. I saw her just a few minutes ago on the balcony of the palace. Go back and look." The captain of the guard goes back and looks, and there's the princess waving to the people. She's perfectly healthy. So they release Peter, who goes back, a little bit of fear. And the king himself places the huge sack of gold coins in Peter's hands. It's, thank you, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Thank you for curing my daughter. So Peter goes and meets up with Jesus outside of the town. And Jesus says, all right, good work, Peter. A little bit squirrely there for a minute, but we came through. Let's divide up the money like we usually do. So Jesus opens up the sack, begins sorting the money into piles. He says, here's 5 for me, 5 for you, 5 for the other one. 5 for me, 5 for you, 5 for the other one. Peter, after a moment, says, Lord, there's just the 2 of us here. Why are you making 3 piles? And Jesus says, Peter, please don't interrupt me. 1 for me, 1 for you, 1 for the third one. And Peter says, Lord, who is the third one? And Jesus says, well, the one who ate the liver, of course. And Peter says, but Lord, that was me. I ate the hare's liver. And Jesus says, aha, I've got you. He says, now, I love you very much, so I will forgive you this time, but don't ever lie to me again. And let the scare that I've just given you be a lesson to you, to remind you not to do that.